Species.
Welcome to Origin of Species, episode 141. I'm Steve here with my good friend Scott. Before we get going, please like and subscribe to Origin of Species on YouTube and Rumble. Give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcast, and give us your money. You can do it as a Species Supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/Species, or you can buy our stuff at our TeePublic powered store at species.com/store. Today, we're going to revisit an idiom that we did actually way back in episode 3, my personal statement on how to live, loaded for bear.
Yes.
And I'm very excited. And from there, we're going to look at the many uses of the word loaded. And I'm also going to give us lots of bear facts, including facts on another type of bear that I've just today learned way too much about.
Russia?
I wish. It's one of those few times I say I wish, but I actually take that back. You're going to learn a lot of things. I tell you, it is probably one of the more giggly review times I've had leading up to an episode that I've had in a long time. There's some interesting terms we're going to learn about.
All right. Looking forward to that.
So as I mentioned, this was an idiom we did way back in episode 3, the origin of loaded for bear. And it was something that really resonated with me. For a myriad of reasons, namely because I'm terrified of bears.
I thought it was a healthy respect. Are you now calling it what it is?
No, I think healthy respect's another way to say terrified.
Okay.
I respectfully am terrified of bears.
Okay.
Because I think we all agree they are killing machines.
They are. And the Bible says what? The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So the fear of bears is just a continuation of wisdom. So
yeah,
no shame in it.
And I just had a flashback to that Old Testament story where some kids were mocking either Elijah or Elijah, and a bear killed them.
Yep. Actually, it was anyway. Yes, I remember that story as well.
Did I get my prophet correct, or did I mess up my prophets?
I think it was Simeon, wasn't it? Or it might have been Elisha. It was Elisha, I think.
We'll find out.
What we'll do is we'll put it in the show notes because that way people can sleep at night.
Yeah. Or at worst, they'll be able to judge us on our lack of Bible knowledge as we wing it, because that was not something I was prepared to discuss.
We did not prepare.
But again, that's the thing about bears, is they just bring out something in me. So you might be asking, where does my terror, or as I prefer to say, fear, or healthy respect of bears come from? Well, I'm going to tell you, even if you don't want to know. So many, many years ago on my honeymoon, my beautiful wife and I, we went to Alberta, Canada in the springtime. A beautiful resort in Banff, Alberta. Very north, a lot of snow still, but still spring. Bears are starting to come out of their hibernation. And as we're on the grounds, I saw a sign that discussed what to do if you saw a bear. Now, for context, again, in Canada, where I will stereotype Canadians as extremely nice people, almost annoyingly nice. You think it's a gentle place, even in the harsh winters of Alberta. But there was a warning about the bears and what to do. And it was pretty much, if you're confronted by a bear, fight back. The bear is going to kill you. Do anything you can do to attack the bear, because your life is at stake.
Yeah. And I love that too, because if you were to go out like man on the street interview style and ask people, everybody would say the same thing. They would either say, play dead. If it's a grizzly, bang pots and pans. If it's a, brown bear, black bear, whatever. But these people in Banff they know for real, because they're out there with the bears. So just more misinformation or disinformation on how to handle bears.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you some more actual information on bears as we go on, because I'm going to drop some bear facts on all sorts of bears. But starting out on, just being married, being somewhere where I'm terrified of bears, I had to ride a horse. There were probably other things that went on that were disappointing for people on the honeymoon too. I mean, it was a time of a lot of stuff that was going on right there. So maybe that's what helped, also cement that in there. But I like to live my life loaded for bear. I am prepared for a bear to attack me at all times.
Yes. Which is smart.
It is smart. It's a good way to live. It's how I live. I'm hashtag loaded for bear. And Scott and I are actually wearing the same shirt.
Oh, do you have that shirt on too?
Yeah,
I love
unfortunately, my camera setup won't allow it. But if you're interested in what this shirt looks like, this is our 2021 Loaded for Bear shirt. You can see this shirt and the updated 2022 version at species.com/store.
That's right. I'm surprised that Loaded for Bear got a second shirt before Kale is from the Devil. I would have thought that would have happened first, but
I think Kale is from the Devil. I mean, there's really nothing more to add to that. It just tells you exactly what you need to know about Kale.
Yeah, you don't need any more
no
like artistic renditions of that. So real quick, it was Elisha. Sorry about the Simeon thing. I got thrown off. He died, I think, like when he found out Jesus was born or something. So totally different story.
Yeah.
All right. So now back to bears. He didn't get eaten by a bear, though.
Back to bears. Right, correct. He didn't get eaten by a bear. So before I get to the etymology of loaded for bear, I'm going to drop some bear facts on you. So I found a great website. Great in the sense that it had a lot of information. Maybe not so great in the fact that as I try to go to bed at night, I'm going to flash back to it. The website is bebearaware.org.
Nice.
So what's great about that, one, just the title of the website, two, it's got a .org. So it's classy.
Yes.
Like the mark of sophistication is to have a .org with that.
And like a lot of the times we talk about things are fun to say. I mean, they lucked out that bear rhymes with aware, because that's good stuff. I mean, because I was just trying to think of a like lion, tiger. I mean, it doesn't really work. There's not really a word that corresponds, but bear aware, that's good stuff.
Yeah. And it's a good way to live. And frankly, with it being a .org, I don't think they're going to be very up on their copyright. So check out species.com/store. There might be a Be Bear Aware t-shirt coming out here. Who knows?
Yeah.
So to help you be aware of bears, I'm going to give you some bear facts on North American bears. So there are 3 types of bears in North America: American black bears, brown bears, which include grizzly bears, and also polar bears. So for right now, I'm going to focus on black bears and brown bears. And I promise you, polar bears will come back up, but maybe not in a way that you expect later in our show.
We're going to start with the bears of color.
Yes, bears of color. So the American black bear is the smallest and most widely distributed of the North American bears. I'm so terrified of bears, I can't say distributed. They're in my head that much. Approximately 600,000 black bears native to North America. Brown bears are more distributed around the globe, even though they do have a very large presence in North America, with about 25,000 bears in Western Canada and about 30,000 in the United States, coming around to 55,000 brown bears in North America.
And so, by the way, if you're going to bring this up later, I'm sorry, but and maybe you've blocked this out, or maybe you don't want to talk about it, which I would understand. Do you remember when there was a bear loose near your house?
Yes, I very much do remember that. And
that was a black bear, right? I think it was.
I believe it was a black bear, which is more terrifying, as we'll learn about here in a few minutes. But I, for several weeks, because I think it was about a 2-week period, I began every business meeting that I had with a bear update, regardless of what the subject matter of the meeting was. If I was in charge of the meeting, it would begin with a bear update. And I did see it extremely urgent. And at one point, it was within a mile of my house. If not,
I remember that. I remember when it was close, and it was like suburban bear on the loose, which I'm sure we'll talk about that later as well.
Yeah, well, we're going to learn about all types of bears as we go on. But if you would like to know more information about bears, including how to tell the difference between the bears, we're going to show you right now. Scott, do you mind firing up that link that I sent you earlier?
Consider it fired up. There you go.
So here we see the difference between black bears and grizzly bears. So you see with black bears, smaller claws, 1 to 2 inches, pretty big grizzly bear claws there, 2 to 4 inches on them. You'll notice a difference. And if you look at them here, a difference in the faces, kind of a straight face for a black bear, more of a, is that say dialed face? I'm having a hard time.
It says dished face profile.
Dished face. No one knows what that means. But
yeah,
the important thing is when you see it, it's still a bear. So that should tip you off right away just to be prepared, to be loaded for bear, as I am.
Man, just looking at this, I mean, I try to pretend that there's no way I'd ever be near a bear. Well, not pretend. I wouldn't.
Mm,
I'm not an outdoorsy guy. But like just looking at that grizzly bear, imagine coming face to face with that.
mhm.
Dude,
Yeah.
that would be rough.
And it will, but that's why you have to live life loaded for bear. So,
Yeah,
before we will get into the etymology of loaded for bear here very shortly, but I did want to leave us with some good information. So I researched what to do, how to address being attacked by a bear, and found some good information through the National Park Service. And what was great about this is it actually reinforced some of the story I've been telling for years. That
good.
sometimes I'm a bit of a fabulous when it comes to stories, and sometimes I'm sure I've embellished things here and there. But let's see how this plays out against the facts that the National Park Service provides us. So, in discussing bear attacks, National Park Service says bear attacks are rare. Most bears are only interested in protecting food, cubs, or their space. However, being mentally prepared can help you have the most effective reaction. Every situation is different, but below are guidelines on how brown bear attacks can differ from black bear attacks. So, starting with brown bears, also grizzly bears. If you are attacked by a brown/grizzly bear, leave your pack on and play dead.
Okay,
Play
so you
dead.
do play dead for the grizzly bear.
Yeah.
Also, this shows you how much I know. I just now learned that grizzly bear and brown bear are the same. I thought they were three different things.
We learn things here on Origin of Species.
Yes, we do.
It's a podcast about words, phrases, and other things, and we're
Yep.
we're going really hard on the other things part
This
as we're
whole
starting out
episode,
here. Yeah, we're gonna get to some words.
which is fine.
So if you get attacked by a grizzly bear, leave your pack on, play dead, lay flat on
Mhm.
your stomach with your hands clasped behind your neck, spread your
Mm.
legs to make it harder for the bear to turn you over. Remain still until the bear leaves the area.
I think that would be the part I'd have the hardest part with is, I mean, playing dead, no problem. It's less energy. It's sort of my natural habitat. Just lie down. But getting on your stomach and spreading your legs open, like,
Mhm.
okay, it's harder to turn you over. But on the other hand, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go out. I don't want, like, the last thing I do is like be presenting to a bear.
Yeah.
That could be some sort of practical joke by whoever wrote this. Is like, you're gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
Get down, face down, put your hands behind your neck just in case he wants to tie you up,
Yeah.
and then spread your legs and
Mhm.
go ahead and take your pants down too.
Yeah.
That will let them know that you're really dead, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have a hard time with that last part, but
Yeah, it is. It's like, if being eaten alive by an animal isn't bad enough,
right.
we're gonna suck as much indignity out of you, or
Yeah.
dignity out of you, I guess, as possible.
Sure, yeah.
So if that bothers you, playing dead and being eaten alive by a bear, maybe it'd be better if you got attacked by a black bear. So this is what you're supposed to do if you get attacked by a black bear. If you're attacked by a black bear, do not play dead. That's written all in caps.
Mhm.
Try to escape to a secure place such as a car or building. If escape is not possible, try to fight back using any object available. Concentrate your kicks and blows on the bear's face and muzzle. If the bear attacks you in your tent or stalks you, then attacks, do not play dead. Fight back.
Yeah, you're screwed. So this is right. I mean, this is what basically they said.
Yeah.
So first of all, try to hide in a car or something, which is basically like
Or
a
building.
tuna can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me get to this convenient building right next to this bear attack.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. Nothing you get inside is going to save you. So I do also love focus on the face and muzzle when I'm like, I can't fight a human. Fighting a bear, and like not only fighting a bear, but like focusing my thrust to hit. You got to be
Yeah.
kidding me. You know what I would do?
Mhm.
I would pretend that I thought it was a grizzly bear or whatever the one you're supposed to play dead is, and
Mhm.
I would just play dead. And then when it didn't work, at least people would say, "Oh, he got them mixed up." That would be less, embarrassing than trying to go
Mhm.
toe to toe
Yeah.
in a fist fight with a bear.
And if they knew you got mixed up, they would maybe ignore the fact that you were, ass up with your
Yeah.
pants dropped at the same time too.
That's probably why they're like, definitely don't play dead
Yeah.
with wait, now I already forgot. This is the grizzly, right?
No, black bear.
See,
Black
this is
bears you
this is
fight it. Yeah. Well,
I
that's why
would never remember in the moment, but this
you
is
will
good.
now. That's why you have to live your life loaded for bear.
Black bear, you fight
Mhm.
grizzly bear. So maybe I'll try to remember like grizzly bear, go G for go down. I don't know. I'll never remember this. But
Or I got a new thing I just made up right now.
yes.
See a bear, shoot on sight. That doesn't even rhyme. But anyway, just if you see a bear, kill it. Be loaded for bear.
Just be loaded for bear really is the message here. Because if you have a gun or something, you're gonna be in better shape than either of the other alternatives, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Unless bears are impervious to bullets like Superman, but I don't think that's
but
true.
there's a lot, because I don't want to spend all our time on being literally loaded for bear. I will briefly say the biggest thing I found is bear spray, which is a weaponized pepper spray specialized for bears, is the main weapon you're supposed to carry with yourself when
So
you're
it
in the
just
national park.
it confuses it, or it just pisses it off more.
That's
I'm
part of
sure
the
I'm sure it works. I know I'm being
No,
very
but that's part
defeatist.
of the problem with it. And there's
Yeah.
also, that's why I've researched, there's now pepper gel that you can get, which is essentially pepper spray in a gel form, bear spray in a gel form, which will stick to what you hit. So it's not just air that, it can't be dispersed by a stiff breeze that happens to pop up.
Yeah,
It's
what you
gonna
need
get
is
on.
like a tool belt that has both of those that you could just whip out at any moment.
Yeah.
The spray, and then you're launching the goo at it as well.
Mhm.
And then just for good measure, you go play dead.
Yeah.
And
And also too, we'll talk more about whipping it out and launching goo at things later
I
in our show.
figured, yeah.
So for right now, let's transition to actually the purpose of our show, which is to tell you the history of words and phrases. Loaded for bear. So first, I'm going to give the definition that is presented in dictionary.com. Fully prepared for action, also spoiling for a fight. This term, dating from the mid-1800s, alludes to the heavy charge of powder or lead that hunters use for large animals like bear.
Makes sense.
Yep. Merriam-Webster states it as an idiom, informal, prepared to deal with attacks or criticism, prepared to fight or argue. She went into the interview loaded for bear.
And as a reminder, you mentioned that we had done this like as one of our first couple episodes.
Mm.
The whole thing about starting this podcast did come from Cuddy or Jib, but
Mhm.
the seed had been planted before that with the deal where nobody knew what loaded for bear meant when I was,
Yeah,
because I made the loaded for beer joke when
that's
we got
right.
a bunch of beer, and my friend didn't get it, and
Mhm.
I was like asking people in line, and it took me like 3 people before somebody had heard it. Either that, or again, they were just really uncomfortable that I was talking to them, which either way. But yeah, it's a great one. I love it. I'm glad we're doing it again.
Yeah. So one of the things I found a little bit interesting in looking at the definitions were they weren't as, I think, bear focused as I wanted.
Mhm.
Dictionary.com says, fully prepared for action, spoiling for a fight.
Yeah.
Merriam-Webster is prepared to fight or argue. So in a rare occasion, I went to Urban Dictionary, and actually, I got to say, I really like the Urban Dictionary definition better. So for a change of pace from new slang, going to Urban Dictionary. To be prepared mentally and/or physically for extreme opposition, typically used in reference to an aggressive or potentially violent situation. The phrase originates with American hunters and woodsmen and regions frequented by the brown bear. Brown bears are the largest land-based predator on Earth, and when expecting to deal with them, hunters would bring much more powerful rifles than they would if hunting other game. So I'm not sure if brown bears are the largest land-based predator on Earth. Um, Not really worried about that because, again, I'm just loaded for bear anyway.
Mhm.
But it gets back to, the origin of it, which is pretty much, it makes sense when you see it. When you hear someone's loaded for bear, you know what you mean, even if they're prepared for an argument. You would imagine if I'm going to fight a bear, I'm going to bring
Mhm.
everything I have to hit him.
Yes.
So going to when this was first used, went to Green's Dictionary of Slang. And the first reference they bring is from 1876 from a newspaper in Deadwood, South Dakota called Black Hills. And the quote is, "A couple or more drinks inspired him to carelessly remark that he was a good one loaded for bear and could lick any man in the house."
I like it.
So in this case, I think that lick means to fight somebody.
Yeah, I was gonna say I also like the use of lick in
Yeah.
that sense. We haven't done that one.
But
That's
again, a
good.
little foreshadowing here for that.
Mm.
So, in looking at this, it reminded me, and actually listening to our old episode, a quote that you had before from 1877, which was one of the other that's not quoted here, but I've verified it. It is a true quote from 1877 from a document called "The Proceedings of the Grand Commandancy of Knights Templar for the state of Wisconsin.
That's right.
And here's the quote. Sir Cruft thinks we do Sir Thomas injustice.
Yes.
We don't mean what we ascribe to him. Very well. If we have done him injustice, we are more than ready to make the amenity honorable, but we won't modify a word what we said was supposed to be in his meeting. We were loaded for bear and aimed at bear.
Nice. By the way, I'm so glad it just occurred to me that this could have happened, that you could have just spent this whole time debunking me. That would actually be really funny. you just start doing episodes where you take old ones and debunk what
it's a good
we
thought.
did.
If we ever run out of ideas, we could just debunk each other, especially the early episodes.
That would be funny.
I think we got a little bit better at doing research.
How dare you? I got all mine straight from Phrase Finder with no other references. If that's bad,
that is a good point.
Literally just printed off Phrase Finder. Let's go.
So one of the things that was interesting about this is I remember when you said that and you said Knights Templar, I instantly thought of the Catholic Church pre-Reformation, the Knights Templar being a group that were formed to, I think, defend Christians during the Crusades. But I did some research on that, and the Knights Templar they're referencing here is actually an order of Masons from the Masonic Lodge. So they claim to be related to the Catholic Knights Templar. And that is a whole other episode in and of itself, getting into the Masons and all the history and legends and things that are tied in, myths that are tied in with that. Yeah. So that is certainly a rabbit hole we could go down.
Well, when I hear Knights Templar, all I think of is Tom Hanks's horrible acting performance and haircut in the Da Vinci Code.
I'm glad you brought up his haircut. I think that sometimes his bad acting in that movie does overshadow his terrible mullet.
It's a competition throughout the movie on which is worse. And really, if you sat there and watched it, you'd go back and forth. I do think you'd end up though with the acting. And this is Tom Hanks, but again, I believe we talked about this either on an Uncut or somewhere else. He's trying to do something. He's trying to make like an Indiana Jones thing or something. Yeah, it's horrific. So Tom Hanks, love ya. But his hair is just slightly worse than his acting in that one, in my opinion. But you should watch it yourself.
Yeah, or just watch Bachelor Party for his best film, just to kind of reboot yourself and get a good perspective again on Tom Hanks. So, in conclusion, for Loaded for Bear, it's the idiom that explains itself. When you're going to go against a bear, you need to be prepared with everything. Bring your biggest guns, your biggest ammunition. Be prepared to fight. It's the way that I live my life. And it's the way that you should live your life, especially if you're somewhere where black bears are prominent.
Love it. Thank you.
So, Scott, what I want to do next is to break down the terms in that phrase. I'm going to look at the many uses of the word loaded, and also some new things I learned about bears, a whole other species of bears, you could say, later. But first, you had some information that you wanted to share.
I do. And I hope that when we talk about loaded, I swear if baked potato isn't involved, then we might have a problem. Or maybe I just brought loaded baked potato into the show, which is appropriate because this is a new segment called Origin of Eatcies. Let's do it.
Bacon? No, I want my bacon. I gotta tell you something. Bacon is good for me.
So, like practically all of the segments I create, this will probably be a one-off because I'll get bored and not do it again. But Steve, you and I had a conversation the other day, and I think I said, you know what, man, I am so sick of every new slang being TikTok or a rapper. Like, it's almost impossible to find new slang, and if you do, it's not TikTok. There's no, Lil nobody's involved. It's like Roblox, which again. So I remembered that the other day I had this thought and I was like, what's the deal with the McRib? And I love a McRib. Maybe some people on this podcast, a lot of people have given me shit over the years for it. And I was like, what's the deal? Like, should I be disgusted? Where did it come from? So I really went down McRib rabbit hole. And I'm ready to share.
Which is probably one of the ingredients of a McRib.
Touche, well played. We'll find out, because
Okay.
guess what? We're going to get into it. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of the McRibby here. Now, this is a Steve episode. You're doing the main topics. I'm going to try to not take an hour on this. I'm going to keep it as brief as possible. But I think I texted you before the show and said, really, there could be a McRib podcast. There have been weirder podcasts.
Yeah.
So rabbit hole you bring up, it may have rabbit holes in it. Let's just get this out of the way, okay?
Yeah.
First of all, as I said, I love McRibs. I love a McRib. I find them good. I've gotten a lot of ridicule over the years for it, and I think some people like them ironically. Some people actually like them. There's a lot of there are rumors that McRibs are made out of pig anus, and so the rabbit hole thing isn't too far off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to debunk this, okay?
Okay,
I'm going to try to debunk it. Because as many McRibs as I have, is sort of like I kind of have to debunk this, or it's going to be hard to have another McRib. It's kind of like the Life in the 1500 emails where your Aunt Peggy or your Aunt whomever would send around. This was a big Facebook one, and I don't know if you remember Facebook, and they probably still do. There are a lot of those posts that are, clickbaity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously it's still there, but one that was really making the rounds was had a photo showing, quote, I'm quoting here, boxes of boneless inverted pig rectums, which were allegedly delivered outside of the McDonald's. And the actual photo though, has nothing to do with McDonald's. It was taken about a decade before the post started going around, and it's from the streets of Taipei, where bung is cooked into all sorts of delicacies. So it really was inverted pig anus, but it wasn't outside of McDonald's, or McDonald's did a really good job covering this up. So what exactly is a McRib? Well, the McDonald's website, this is how they describe it. The McRib I'm going to say it like the McDonald's guy. The McRib starts with seasoned boneless pork dipped in a tangy barbecue sauce, topped with slivered onions and dill pickles, all served on a toasted home-style bun, which sounds pretty good. And trust me, we're going to get to the real at the end of this. The McRib, though, if I went to Wikipedia, this is how they describe it: that McRib consists of restructured boneless pork, boneless pork patty shaped like a miniature rack of ribs, barbecue sauce, onions, and pickles served on a bun. So, there's one thing that kind of stands out there. I don't know if anything jumped out to you in that.
Was it restructured pork?
Yes. The term restructured boneless pork. You go, okay, well, what in the world is that? Well, I'll tell you what it is and where it came from. But first I want to share with you just the first commercial that came out, or at least that I could find, when the McRib first showed up. And you can sort of see the marketing that went into this, which I always enjoy. So if you have 30 seconds to spare, I'm going to share this from 1982, when the McRib came out, and it was a big phenomenon. Or was it?
82. What'd you say this was again?
McDonald's calls it the McRib sandwich. It's a new kind of Q.
McRib? I don't see any bones.
Hey, who wants bones in a sandwich?
Right.
McRib is all meat, lean pork that's grilled and simmered in a hickory smoke-flavored barbecue sauce, and put on a home-style roll with pickles and onions. Well, how about it? The McRib sandwich, a new kind of Q. At
So I had to watch it a couple of times because is he saying a new kind of cute? What's happening? A new kind of Q. So that I don't know that slang ever really caught on. Maybe in the South, I've never heard somebody say, "Hey man, you want to come over for some Q?"
And by the way, I just want to shout out ivermectin right now, just in case we can get yanked for that instead of the content of that video.
You got to get it out every one. Good job. I also think that actor should have received a daytime Emmy award or like a Golden Globe or something, because if you can find that online, or if you're watching here on YouTube, he really did give it his all. So the McRib popped up. It was kind of a novelty. It had never happened before. So the majority of what I'm covering here in the next few minutes comes from a really good article on Thrillist about the history of the McRib, and there's a like we always find, there's about 8 articles with on essentially the exact same thing.
Right.
So I would have never guessed this, but it all started back in the 1960s at a military research center in a small town called Natick, Massachusetts. And there was a team of scientists at this military institute that were working on this thing called restructured meat. Any guesses why the military would be doing that?
I've seen Night of the Living Dead, so I can imagine only what this could mean.
Brains. Yeah, it was MREs, made what are they called? Made ready to eat meals.
Yes.
That the
Okay.
right, which supposedly stay good for a very long time. MREs, I'm sure everyone has probably heard of that. And so they were trying to come up with new ideas, and they were hitting up against a brick wall until the hero of our story emerged, and the creator of restructured meat is the very fake sounding Dr. Roger Mandingo. So Dr. Roger Mandingo figured it out, man. He cracked the case and was able to make a pork patty. And they did chicken, they did all sorts of stuff, but Dr. Roger Mandingo was and frankly, this is why I'm doing this, so I can say Dr. Roger Mandingo a lot. So anyway, he used pork shoulder and other meat, and they were used in MREs. In the 1970s, there was a little late 70s, there was a little CEO by the name of Ray Kroc, who was expanding, and obviously everyone knows Ray A. Kroc from McDonald's. He wanted to get in on this restructured meat game. He hired a gentleman by the name of Rene Arend, who's a classically trained chef from Luxembourg who worked at the Drake Hotel. And Kroc pulled him out, gave him Dr. Roger Mandingo's technology, yada, yada, yada. Guess what was born? Was it the McRib? No. You may have heard of it. Little something called the Chicken McNugget.
Oh.
And the demand was so high for the Chicken McNugget. I mean, you can imagine.
That actually is something that has changed American society. That was a societal change when the McNugget was invented.
Yeah. There was. I mean, in these articles talk about it. It was a game changer, and our fat asses were like, more. You talk about zombies and brains. Send more paramedics, man. Send more McNuggets. So there's a chicken shortage. Just like a couple years ago, there was like a wing shortage. The fatter we get, the more these shortages seem to happen. Yeah. Anyway, it was a phenomenon. And so the demand was so high for the Chicken McNuggets that they're running out. And the store owners were like, hey, we need something else. So Arend, the classically trained French chef, he's classically trained French chef, but from Luxembourg, had the idea to come up with a beef alternative, which essentially was pork. So he used the same technology that was used for the McNuggets, and he tried to basically make a pulled pork type sandwich. And here's what I love, by the way, too. It said in the articles I was reading that it would have been cheaper, and there was some pressure for this chef Arend to just make a pork patty and dip it in the sauce. But he said, no, it will be molded to look like ribs. And for that, he's a visionary. I mean,
he is.
We could have not had the McRib as we know it. And let's be honest, the McRib's all about the sauce, man. And those ribs, the fake ribs, really catch that sauce. So he stood his ground. He did the McRib we've come to know and love, and ta-da, the end. No, it was a bust. It was considered a big bust. Matter of fact, in the press, they were calling it the McFlop because nobody liked the McRib, or maybe a few people did. Yeah. So by 1983, it wasn't a new type of Q. Nobody cared, and it started to go off of menus. So then this cycle of the McRib popping up every now and then began. And that ended up turning into a phenomenon itself. Now, why does that happen? So that was actually the main thing I wanted to know. It's like, what's the deal with this? So there's 3 theories I found online to why it happens. And I think we'll kind of figure it out. One of them is that when pork goes on sale, which sounds ridiculous because they can buy and flash freeze this and keep it for as long as they want. But anyway, that's something that's out there, that whenever the prices of pork are low, they start making McRibs and then they ship them out. I read somewhere, and I could not find the article. I'd read it the first time when I was going down my rabbit hole, that the McRib is available pretty much at any time for franchise owners, however you put it. And it's just a gimmick for them to be able to drive a little business in whenever they want to. But I don't think that's true because of all the other stuff I read. It sounds like corporate McDonald's is the one, because they set their national ad campaigns for
it. It seems to be some sort of like, there's a McRib season that I've never put my finger on like when it is, but it seems at some point during the year that there's going to be an announcement that McRib is back.
Last McRib season was November of last year. And it's really sad that I know that, but I only know it actually because of the research, not because I'm sure I had one, but it's there's no rhyme or reason to it. Nobody can figure it out. And that's why they have things out there such as the McRib locator online that you can find. When I did have Facebook, one of the things I would post is whenever the McRib was back, I just make sure to post it, because in case people get their news just from Facebook, let people know the McRib is back. By the way, there was a McRib Jr. that was around briefly in 2000. Do I remember it? Yes, I do. Did I try it? Of course I did. It's McRibs. But it was only around for basically it was a McRib, but it was just on like a hamburger bun. It was basically what would have happened if our guy didn't stand up for his ribbed meat. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. What's in a McRib? McDonald's says pork patty. Earlier on, Dr. Mandingo, I think, was the one that said it's mostly pork shoulder, but mostly, right? I don't think pork shoulder just does that. So it's going to take a minute, but this is the money shot that everybody's been waiting for. What's in a McRib? I'm going to read this to you. I'm quoting now Dr. Roger Mandingo. He says, restructured meat products, including the McRib, are commonly manufactured by using lower valued meat trimmings reduced in size by flaking, chunking, grinding, chopping, or slicing. That meat mixture is mixed with salt and water to extract salt-soluble proteins. Those proteins produce a sort of glue which binds muscle pieces together. Those muscle pieces then are reformed to produce a, quote, meat log of a specific form or shape. The log is then cut into steaks or chops. I could stop there, but I'm not going to. Again, from Dr. Roger Mandingo, most people would be extremely unhappy if they were served heart or tongue on a plate, he said, but flaked into a restructured product, it loses its identity. Such products as tripe, heart, and scalded stomachs are high in protein, completely edible, wholesome, and nutritious, and most are already used in sausage without objection. So I'm going to stop there. It actually does get grosser a little bit, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
It's fairly gross. I will admit that sounded fairly gross, but one thing I didn't hear, pig anus.
Right.
And he's shooting straight with us. He straight up told us scalded stomachs are in there. Yeah. So Steve, I'm done. I just want to ask one question. If you had to guess, you would think that the McRib is most popular here in the US because, as I have mentioned before, we tend to be fatter. But no, you might be surprised what country likes the McRib the most. It's most popular in this country.
I'm going to go with the opposite of what it should be. So I'm going to go with France.
You're very close. It's even more opposite. Germany. And I say it's more opposite because I do think of Germans as sort of the anti-American in that you don't see many fat Germans, I guess. The Germans love it. And of course, the Luxembourg loves it too. Yeah. Because their guy came up with it, apparently. So my conclusion in all this is McRibs are awesome. And if you don't like McRibs, you might as well just join PETA because you're eating anyway, so Steve, what do you think about McRibs? I did that on purpose.
No, that was good. That's a good emotional, manipulative thing to say, and it worked for me because you've inspired me now to actually maybe try a McRib. But I have to say, the next time I feel bad, knowing that there's someone out there by the name of Roger Mandingo who also invented restructured pork and the McRib is just something that will always bring joy to me. I feel like I'm loaded for bear with knowledge on McRibs now.
Awesome. That was the plan. And that was our first and probably only origin of Eatcies.
Bacon?
No, I want my bacon. I gotta tell you something. Bacon is good for me.
Roger Mandingo.
That's when I knew I had to do it. I was pretty sure I wanted to do it. And when I said, oh, started in the military, that's something. Like I was thinking if this was a word or phrase, I'd say, oh, it comes from the military. There's a French trained chef from Luxembourg, just being able to say Luxembourg.
Yeah.
But Roger Mandingo, that's just puts it over the edge.
And the classically trained chef who fought for his vision of what a McRib should be.
All
that
true.
It's gonna have fake. It's gonna look like there's bones in it, but there's not. But it sounds like there's a purpose with it. It gives you some space to help your sauce pull up.
Yeah, and I don't know if he was just trying to be an artiste or if he really had the foresight to know that, like, hey, you want that sauce. By the way, the last thing I'll say, I remember I didn't say this in the segment, but it said the main reasons that the McRib was a bust when it first came out were that it was messy and that it didn't taste good. I'm like, that's a bad combo. You can have one or the other. Yeah. You really can't have both.
Yeah, that is a twofer to overcome there. Well, Scott, thank you for that.
You're
welcome. I miss feeling self-righteous about what a TikToker or rapper did, but I now know about Roger Mandingo. Yep. So that, Scott, was a segment that I would describe as loaded. And it's a word that I love in the same way that maybe you love McRibs. And one of the things I like about it is it has so many uses, not as many uses as meat as we've seen. And again, I think not that we have to let the segment go, but I really like the fact that Roger Mandingo called out basically, if you want to get saucy or snotty about the McRib, if you eat sausage, you don't want to know what's in that either. And there are holes in that.
That was good because he said it right at the point where I was grossed out, and then I was like, oh, actually, fair point. And that's what brings the Germans in. They don't give a crap what's in their meat.
Yeah. So the next term we're going to look at, breaking down the terms in the idiom "loaded for bear," my personal way to live, is the term "loaded." So it's a word I like. Has many uses. It's also my favorite Velvet Underground album. It was their last album, and it was called "Loaded" because it was loaded with hits.
Really?
Well, that's what
I'm not a Velvet Underground guy. I don't really know.
Well, no one is. And I say a bit facetiously, it's my favorite Velvet Underground album. Nobody likes the Velvet Underground. I think the Velvet Underground is one of those things that like everybody, like there's certain people that feel obligated to like say the Velvet Underground influenced them.
Right.
And no one is going home on a Friday after a long week of work and going, you know what I need to listen to right now? I need some Velvet Underground to help, kick off my weekend.
Right. I need some Lou Reed. And
now I will delineate between Lou Reed and Velvet Underground because I actually do legitimately like Lou Reed, and that's my passive aggressive way to still try to pretend I'm cool. But I think the Velvet Underground is extremely overrated. The only good songs on Loaded are Sweet Jane and Rock and Roll, and I like those songs because of Lou Reed's solo versions of them that he did on subsequent albums.
There you go.
But
there should be a Lou Reed and Fleetwood Mac power band, or what do they call it? Not a power band. What do they call it when bands come? Super group. There we go. But he's dead. Dang it.
Yeah, he's dead, and I think he died after. I don't know if this just came back to me because I'm pretty sure I blocked it out. Do you remember a few years ago that Metallica and Lou Reed teamed up to do an album?
I somehow missed that or blocked it out.
Yeah, and that's not a joke. That sounds like something I would make up. That is 100% true.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm actually not a Lou Reed fan. I'm so hipstery and like always need to know the cool stuff that I'll get into anything. And if you mention like somebody, I usually try to get into them and understand. I just can't. I don't know what it is. I think that you know what? Never mind. I was about to get into this whole Lou Reed jag. Moving on. We can do a personal records part 2 with that.
Sure.
With, Lou Reed.
I like it. Well, Lou, it sounds like your feelings on Lou Reed are loaded. So let's get into that word.
Just like this term, apparently.
Yeah. So starting with at Edom Online, loaded adjective originates from the 1600s, laden or burdened. Also can reference dice from 1739.
Oh, yes.
Also in a reference to lead inserted. Sticking with dice, it's a reference to the lead inserted to unbalance them.
Mm-hmm.
Loaded could also mean rich or wealthy. That comes from 1910, and guns from 1858, and also meaning drunk from 1886. Probably from the expression, and I'm quoting here from Edom Online, "take one's load." So moving on, let's go to Merriam-Webster and talk about some of the other things that loaded can mean. It can mean equipped with an abundance of features, like a fully loaded car.
Oh, yeah.
It can mean featuring a great amount of top-level talent, like a loaded roster.
Loaded cast, yeah.
And it can mean filled or topped with many things. And the example they give is a loaded baked potato.
Yes, sir. The only way to eat a baked potato.
Yeah, loaded with McRib, with restructured pork in it.
You're giving me ideas now.
Yeah.
Shred up a McRib, put it on a... That's a new type of cue right there.
Oh, that's that is a new type of cue. Oh, this Dr. Roger Mandingo, thank you.
Yeah.
So loaded also can mean, again, myriad of things, including intoxicated by alcohol or drugs. Velvet Underground actually did call their album Loaded because it was supposed to be loaded with hits.
Oh, wait, and Metallica did, not to cut you off, but I just thought they had the album Load, and then they had Reload. Right. And it's interesting that they did something with Lou Reed, who also had the album Loaded. It all comes back to load, man.
Yeah,
Loaded.
It does. So there was a double entendre with that. Supposed to be loaded with hits, but also loaded meaning intoxicated by alcohol or drugs.
Oh, okay.
So going back to Green's Dictionary of Slang, I wanted to find some examples of how loaded was used. So I found some examples to go back to some of the definitions we've listed, but I found even more definitions of loaded that I'm going to share with you today.
Wow.
So the first sense of this came really into popular conscience outside of being, meaning something was laden or burdened down, had to do with crooked dice. So we see references back in 1801. It's the first reference they found. There was one article from 1808 that stood out to me by the author Billy Bradshaw in his book, The History of Billy Bradshaw, which I just for a title just for that, regardless of any information he had, I thought that was a wonderful title.
That should inspire you to write a book called The History of Steve Glissman.
It could. I might come from here. And the quote is, "I was caught in the very act of shifting. At least 20 loaded, scooped, and false dice were found on me."
Oh, man. He didn't get shot for that?
He probably did.
If I remember the Time Life book commercials, I don't know if you remember this. I always think about this more than I should. When it would say, "Stories of the Old West," and it'd go, "And they once shot a man for snoring." Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And he was probably because he had loaded dice in his nose, or he had some restructured pork.
I was going to say, imagine what they do to you with weighted dice. They just do that just for snoring. Man. So he survived to write his book. I like that.
He did. Yeah, they might have shot him, but he made it to write his own history. Yeah. And it gave him some arrogance, too, to do that.
Yeah.
So going back to loaded being a reference to drinking, you would think maybe this would go back to Ireland, but close. Australia, the first thing they list is 1855. A gentleman whose real name was Mr. William Gunn, but was referred to as the Gun. And he has 2 N's in his name, too, which I was impressive. I hope he met up with Billy Bradshaw at some point in his life. The Gun, who was evidently loaded to the muzzle, immediately fired a volley of abuse at witnesses. So drinking, again, working out. So I mentioned also that there were some different definitions of loaded that didn't come up before. One is a meaning of loaded as infected with venereal disease.
Oh,
yeah. And this is traced back to 1943 in the United States Army anti-VD poster. And it says, loaded, don't take your chances with pickups. And the pickups in question are 3 women who are shown on the poster.
There are certain times in our history where like our media and social causes, or not social cause, but just whatever was going on, intersect in a way that's amazing, and that's one of them. I would like to see that poster.
And speaking of something I'd like to see, another term another use of loaded is a female, well-built, big-breasted.
There's so many ways to say that, but now there's another one I didn't know.
Yeah,
and but it's tricky, because if you say, "Hey, yo, Bertha is loaded," you're like, are you saying she's riddled with hepatitis, or are you saying that she's big north of the border?
Yeah. And in this case, the quote that I have from 1955 doesn't make that any clearer. I don't think it doesn't seem to be indicating VD, but I don't know if this would fly either. And this is a quote: Cora shows on the scene. She's a real loaded girl, fat all over.
I think that's probably the latter. I would get fat all over.
Yeah.
All right.
So again, and I'll conclude by going back to another definition of loaded from Merriam-Webster: carrying a hidden or secondary meaning that is capable of causing unease.
So I've been wondering if you were going to say loaded question, and I think maybe that falls into that category.
I think it does, and also stating that Cora is fat all over, I think could somehow maybe not work out the way that you wanted it to.
No, that even back then, it's like, oh no, unless it's with a PH.
Maybe. And we'll look at it. And again, you say we don't want to do, we're tired of new slang having TikTok and hip hop come up, but
we should do 90s new slang. That would be good, because it would still come from rap and hip hop, but there wouldn't be TikTok.
There'd be no TikTok, but that is a great way.
It'd be hip hop and MTV or something.
It's what Dr. Roger Mandingo would do.
It's what Lil Mandingo would do.
Mm-hmm.
There probably is a little, actually, I don't know. I don't know. We haven't done the origin of species on that word. Something tells me I don't want to look too hard at it. There's probably some origin that we don't want to go into there.
Well, speaking of things you might not want to look at too hard.
Oh boy.
I mentioned loaded for bear is our theme. And again, the way to live your life is to be prepared to shoot a bear at any time. If you don't believe us, we have 2 shirts at species.com/store in which you can buy loaded for bear shirts. So we talked about loaded and all the things you can do with that. But I told you we talk about another type of bear.
Yes.
So we mentioned before brown bears, black bears, mentioned very briefly polar bears. But I'm going to talk about now the gay subculture of gay bears.
Yeah. So this is something that I think that if I wanted to, I could pass for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I don't. It's not my preferred viewing, or I'm not into that stuff, but that you know of. But
yeah,
I do think it's like usually burlier guys with beards and back hair and well, maybe not back hair, but I just threw that in there.
Well, let's see. And that's one of the things we're going to explore. As with a lot of subcultures, it's not as simple as just there's bears and that's it.
Okay.
Many layers to this sexual onion that we're going to uncover starting right now. So definition of bear from Wikipedia: in gay culture, a bear is a larger and often hairier man who projects an image of rugged masculinity.
That's not me.
And to add, but we're not done yet. And to add from that, a definition I found in the Village Voice: bears are chubby, hairy, masculine gay males who like beer and flannel shirts.
Yeah. So I've got like 7 out of the 10 attributes: chubby, flannel, beer, hairy, not rugged. Well, maybe rugged, but not rugged masculinity. Not gay, which I feel like of all of them, that's the one that you'd kind of need to have in the mix.
Yeah. It's a pretty big component of that. It's key in the restructured pork to have that.
So you might be going to get into this. I'm sorry, I keep jumping in, but is there a difference if you see a black bear that you would lay down on your stomach, or is this only for real bear? Is there any sort of correlations there?
Well, let's see if we can find out. So as I mentioned, you would think hearing the definition of bear that maybe that's just like that's it. You have to have these things, but there's many facets to this subculture. And I'm going to share some of them with you. So here's some different slang terms related to the bear community from Wikipedia. And let's see how maybe you and I fit into some of these subcategories of bear. Are you ready?
So to speak, yeah.
A younger looking version of a bear, sometimes but not always with a smaller frame, called a cub.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you look like a cub, because that would be weird.
Well, we're not done. We're not done yet. Maybe
okay.
I do, but trust me, there's again.
That's not me though. That's definitely
large onion here.
Yeah.
A subset of a subset, a heavy set man who might be described as overweight or obese. A chub.
A chub. Okay.
Chub.
Ugh. Yeah. So basically a fat person. Yeah. Okay. I've already checked that box.
Well, overweight or obese. So more than fat, like taking it up a notch, I would say. So continuing to take things up a notch, told you polar bears would come back. Polar bear, an older bear whose facial and body hair is predominantly or entirely white or gray. And a North American polar bear fact, not this type of polar bear, but more with the claws. Polar bears actually don't have white hair. They have translucent hair.
Oh, that's, I think either you told me that before, or I heard that, but I forgot that. Yeah. That's cool.
So you might wonder what you would call someone who is a bear of Asian descent.
Why don't you tell me?
Panda bear.
Oh, I thought that might be it, but I wanted you to say it in case it somehow got us in trouble.
Yeah.
And I just want to take a stand right now that I denounce hate of any kind.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Especially
when you and I are going to fit under one aspect of this community, one way or the other. All right. So even though the category is bears, there's some animals that are kind of like in the bear, like Venn diagram, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Okay. A wolf. A wolf is a gay man with body and facial hair, but also has very lean, muscular, athletic build.
See, now, but this is all still under the umbrella of the bear subculture, or is this just...
Listen, I don't make the rules. I just read what Wikipedia says.
Oh, I'm not blaming you, but I'm that sounds like it should be a different category. But what do I know? So you're a bear, but you're actually ripped and you're like a zaddy situation.
I think I don't know what that means, but I think it's more of the hair being the issue. So continuing, because I saw a wolf and I'm like lean but muscular and athletic. But then I saw one that's another one that's not necessarily a bear, but in the bear community, otter. A hairy, slim, or small frame man. And finally, we want to talk about things that don't fit. The last term is Ursula.
Oh, Lord.
And
so
that's
not even an animal at all. Oh, sorry.
That's a lesbian bear.
Cool. I'm so glad we have all these different categories. What was go back to the beginning. There was bear, and then you said there was there's cub. What was after cub?
Cubs.
Yeah.
There's chubs.
Chub. That's what it was. That's what it is.
Polar bears, panda bears, wolves, otters, and lesbians.
The panda bear thing is kind of racist because imagine you fit one of the other categories and you're really proud. You're like, I'm an otter. I mean, just look at me. And everyone still calls you a panda bear just because of the way you look. I stand against that. Yeah.
Hashtag diversity. I mean, we're a hashtag against racism. We denounce racism. So that is a shame. But what did make me happy is I used to always think of myself, if I had to pick a category, I was going to say I was like an otter with like a thyroid condition. But I feel really happy that there's the panda bear for me. But also, I realized an Ursula when it really comes down to it. It's probably the best category for me.
You could pull off the panda bear otter mix. I think that would be you, and I'm going to be the classic. I guess I got to be a chub, even though that one also comes with another connotation because chub means something else too. So,
yeah. Well, in that community, I think that would be an asset.
Yeah, I guess it would be. You'd need one. So,
yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, it's fun to
learn about new cultures and learn about new things. Today, we've learned about what it means to be loaded for bear, to be prepared to fight at any time.
Yep.
We've learned all the different connotations that loaded can have. We've learned about other people through learning about the bear subculture. And most importantly, you uttered the words that will forever lighten my soul. Dr. Roger Mandingo. Thank you very much for listening to Origin of Species. We appreciate your time and support. If you'd like to support us additionally, please look us up on Patreon at patreon.com/Species. Become a Species supporter. You can also support us by going to our store, species.com/store, powered by TeePublic. Lots of shirts and catchphrases added all the time, including I love the cut of your jib, Kale is from the devil, and various loaded for bear shirts.
That's what I'm talking about. And Bob's your uncle.
Watch out for bears, especially Ursula's. And Kale is from the devil.
Species.